So, I finally was able to learn the name of the butler for Risui, and his or her name is actually Francois. Don't know why it took me that long to actually look up what Francois' name is and how it's pronounced in French when translated into English. I don't know why it took me this long to do it, but yes, now I know that his or her name is Francois. Nothing really special about that, just wanted to bring it up. Hey guys, how's it going? It is your boy, Big Blue Drew 97 here, back at it again with another Dr.Stone review, manga chapter 163, titled Multi-Front Final Battle. So, this is something that I didn't expect from this chapter. This chapter basically starts the final battle between the Kingdom of Science and the American colonies. So that's something that I didn't expect, but you know what? I'm happy that it's happening right now because frankly, with the final battle starting now, it means that the final arc of the American arc is winding down, meaning that we're going to get a little bit closer to discovering who the voice from the moon is, as well as ending the conflict between the American colonies and the Kingdom of Science, so they can work together to build a spaceship to the moon. So, you know, that's going to be a cool development whenever that comes into play, and I can't wait for that to happen. And before we get right into this review, I would like to ask y'all once again to subscribe to my YouTube channel. We're growing very strong, Big Blue Drew 97, and leave a comment below on how do you think this chapter is going to go, as well as like, do you think that this is a good start to the final battle? Because frankly, from what I've read previously in this chapter, it's a really good start to it. So with that out the way, let's get right into the review. Start of this chapter with Risui and Kaseki talking about how they're preparing to finish the aircraft carrier and the plane, and how they're going to have a little bit of a hard time since they really don't know what they should be doing, because even though they are great when it comes to business for Risui and crafting with Kaseki, they don't have the general like scientific knowledge on how they should be building a aircraft carrier and a plane. And so they begin to question like what they should be doing, since Senku is bedridden. Like, how can they do this? Where we see that Senku, even though he's in bed, even though he's like injured heavily, he is still like conveying like what needs to be done to complete the aircraft carrier in the plane. So even though yes, he is physically out of commission, he's still able to give these orders. And Francois, you see why I'm glad that I learned Francois' name. And Francois, not only being the translator and the butler, is also communicating to the other members of the Kingdom of Science Senku's plans. So Francois does that. Francois does their thing, being the role to communicate with everyone, while having Luna and Ara in the room as well, as they will begin to help Senku get better. Because Senku, once he finally conveys the plans to Francois, as well as conveying it to everyone else, now he's going to focus on getting better. And from here, this is where we have Luna getting to use her more doctor, showing that she's a doctor when she is listening to Senku's lungs, trying to figure out whether or not there's blood in it. But while she's doing this with her homemade stethoscope, we get the confirmation that she does know that Senku is the science user, and that she's amazed about how this individual, who's around the same age as her, so around 19 or 20, how he was able to like do all of this by himself. So she confirms that she knows that Senku is a science user, as well as I said, she also uses a stethoscope that she made to listen into Senku's lungs to find if like there's anything wrong with it. And what she does discover is that his left lung sounds weaker, and she says that there's blood pooling in it, meaning that there's blood accumulating in his left lung. Because if you didn't know about how the lungs work, they obviously take in oxygen and expel carbon dioxide, but they do that by expanding and having the air go into specific pockets of the lungs to help sort of like take out the oxygen and then release the carbon dioxide. But if you get fluid into those pockets, then they're unable to get as much oxygen into the blood, which means that it's not able to expand as much because the lungs need to expand. So after this discovery, Senku advises Luna to use a syringe to basically like get the blood out of it, to get all of the blood out of the lungs so that the lungs can expand and take in more air. And from here, she's just scared to do that because she is a medical student, but she only did it for a year. So she's very terrified of like, what if I mess up? Because not only does she also think that she's a capable guy, but Senku is her type of guy. She's afraid that if I do this, I may kill him, and I don't want to do that because he's like my kind of guy. So she's a little bit nervous about that. And we kind of get like the steps and the logic behind Senku of what would happen if they pull out the blood and it continues to pool. Senku basically realizes, oh, if the blood still accumulates in my lungs, that means there's a cut. And if there's a cut, that means there's bleeding somewhere. And if there's bleeding somewhere, we have to find a way to seal it up. And if we try to seal it up, chances are high enough. He doesn't say this, but most likely what has happened or what will happen is that there's going to be some type of surgical procedure to help seal up any cut that they may find. But for that to happen, you must need a whole lot of blood. So Senku goes and says, oh, I'm going to need a transfusion of AB blood in my body. And then you just have Genryo, who's here, and it's like, wait 1 second, I don't want to learn English yet. Oh, God. Okay, come on, Genryo, come on. Like, first of all, yes, you should be learning English since, you know, your enemy is Americans, but Luna understands, like, what Senku is saying. Whether he's talking in English or Japanese, she most likely understands AB, as in the AB blood type. So, we get the confirmation, I'm not sure if we knew this, but Senku is an AB blood type. But Senku also realizes that she is an enemy, but he still pleads with her to continue to help him, which she does, but she gives one condition. And she doesn't even say that you have to agree to the condition or not when she's talking to Senku. She just wants this condition to be thought about to give her like peace of mind while she's helping Senku. And Senku is just wondering, oh, what is that demand that you ask of? And her demand is that Senku becomes her boyfriend, with the shock of Senku's face and dread like piling up on his face. This is the moment where we get the chapter title drop, and I'm just like, I saw this coming. I think we all saw this coming. We all knew that Senku is her type, where he's very confident, he's very knowledgeable in science, that she would find him attractive because of it. But we also know the type of person Senku is, and they even like address it in the chapter, the type of person that Senku is when it comes to relationships, and it's just hilarious. Like, we all saw this coming. We also should have seen the conclusion that was inevitable, and I just love that about this chapter. Going from the ship with the Kingdom of Science, we actually go back to our tunnel boys and girls, our team that is digging a tunnel to the American colonies, where you have Tsukasa and Hyoga, who are actually kind of worried about what would happen if they actually, like, when they finish digging the tunnel, where it leads to an unfavorable position because they have no map of the Xeno's castle. So you have Taiju, who, if you didn't remember this, Carlos is still like their captive. Taiju asks Carlos, like, hey, can you draw us a map? He's like, no! I'm your enemy! Why would I do that? And Taiju, it's like, oh yeah, that's right, of course. Just being sad about it. But then we have Ukyo, who gets a message from the Kingdom of Science, and he hears this feminine voice, and he's like, I don't recognize this voice. Who is this? But Carlos recognizes the voice as being Luna, and she gives him like a set of numbers, and Carlos is like, oh my gosh, what is she saying? What is he saying? And we immediately cut to Ukyo and Carlos with just blank-eyed, sunken, expressionless faces of just shock, and everyone is wondering, like, what did she say that was so shocking? And Immediately afterwards, Carlos cries, and Kohaku is like, "What is going on? Why is he so emotional?" And we get the reveal of what she said. She says, "I finally found a boyfriend. I finally found me a boyfriend, Senku." And we just get the funny reactions of everyone. Carlos is still crying his eyes out. Taiju's congratulating Senku for getting a girlfriend. Chroma's like confused because obviously when it comes to romance he's confused. And probably the best thing that ever happened is that Kohaku has an idea of exactly what happened, and that makes sense because she at one moment was also Senku's girlfriend. So I think that's like a fun connection that you can like make from that statement. But then you see Carlos with this serious face and suddenly takes a brush into his mouth and he's like, "Alright, the situation's changed." He kind of explains that he and Max would go to hell for Miss Luna. So in a split second, Carlos goes from, "No, I won't help you. Luna has a boyfriend, I'll help you." Carlos and Max are the biggest simps in Dr. Stone, and their simpiness has led for Carlos to draw a map of the castle, which means that now the Kingdom of Science tunnel team now has an advantage on where to finish digging and where to pop up, infiltrate Xeno's castle. So you have everyone just being happy about it, but then they come to a realization of, wait 1 second, we're doing all of this, but what about Geen? He's in the castle. He could be a god, but like, how can we get in contact with him? Like, how is he gonna know about our plan as well? He's been in the castle the entire time. And then you have Kohaku who's like, that untrustworthy guy, I trust him, I believe in him, he's gonna figure it out. And I'm like, you trust an untrustworthy guy? How does that work? And then I remember, oh yeah, it's Geen. It's gonna work out fine, which it does, because clearly enough, he has a way to communicate with them, or at the very least, like, he has a way of hearing his teammates out because he has a little transmitter that, if you remember correctly, was invented by Senku when they were trying to find the way to resurrect Tsukasa, and they find the petrification device on the island. He has that kind of like wireless headphone, so he's able to listen in on their conversation. And when he does that, he thinks like, he hears these numbers and he's like, oh, what is this? What is it? What is it? It has to be something simple enough for me to understand, that Xeno can't decipher. And he's like, oh yeah, the Usagi cipher. Okay, that's cool. But then all of a sudden, he hears just like, sort of like, boom! And apparently, what that sound is the creation and the finishing of Dr. Xeno's grand weapon. Because from what is implied, the weapon is finished, and that it's finished, or is about to be completely finished, and that Dr. Xeno's plan will begin the day after tomorrow, or in like 2 days. And from Geen's expression, what he has built is something that the Kingdom of Science won't be able to fight against without any type of prior knowledge. Something that they couldn't possibly imagine. And it's still very vague on what it is, but from what can be implied from it, it has a like tip to it. It kind of looks like a makeshift spaceship, so it could very well be a missile of some sort that he will either aim at the Kingdom of Science to threaten them or completely destroy them. I cannot say for certain, but it could possibly be a missile, and if it is a missile, haha, the Kingdom of Science cannot fight against that. Like, no matter what Senku built, if it's a missile, you can't fight a missile. It's like fighting a guy with a gun pointed at your head. Sure, you can try to attempt, but you're probably gonna die. So, we cut from that serious scene where we get the possible reveal of this destructive weapon of Dr. Xeno, back over to Luna, who's a little bit bored drinking her drink. And the reason why she is bored is because she realizes, I'm officially dating Senku, right? I mean, like, we're dating, right? But, you know, I've really dated before. Like, we don't even hang out. We don't even hold hands. I mean, I'm a smooth operator and all, but like, this is a little bit different than what I thought it was. But I mean, like, it can't like just be like weird. Like, I don't know anything about dating, but there's no way that like this is all fake. Like, there's no way that he's like just doing this to accomplish his goal, right? Like, there's obviously no one in this world who would do something like that, right? And then you just have people in the Kingdom of Science just looking away, avoiding eye contact. And just to hammer it in, you have Kinryo, who's like, yeah, he'll pretty much do anything to achieve his goals. He even went as far as to marry someone, which Luna, as a reasonable person, would be shocked by that because she realizes that her boyfriend is married, which then Kinryo then responds with, but don't worry, he ended it. So Luna comes to the realization that Senku is not the type of person that she thought he was. He is not the best person, and she realizes this by even though that they're boyfriend and girlfriend, they don't really do a whole lot of things together. She realizes that he's married, but then immediately comes to the realization that he's divorced. So Luna is probably not going to be happy for a while, but unfortunately she does not have time to worry because we have Yo, who gives the signal that indicates that someone is on their way. The enemy is on their way to the ship. Stanley has a plane and is heading towards the Kingdom of Science's ship. And you know what? Risui is ready. Because when we see the plane coming through, we see the ship. And we see something pop out of the top of the ship. We see that the ship is like flat with like a runway. And we get the confirmation that the Kingdom of Science has acquired an aircraft carrier and plane. And then you have Risui and Senku, who are in the plane themselves. And you have this funny scene of how Risui is like, oh yes, it's time to battle. We'll avenge Senku. And Senku's in the back like, I'm not dead yet. As we have them saying that this is a science versus science dogfight. So yeah, this chapter, like I said, confirms that the fighting between the Kingdom of Science and Xeno's castle has begun. And it's going to start with a dogfight of plane versus plane. And something else that was mentioned in this chapter as well is how this is going to be a fight on land, sea, and sky. And from what we're seeing now, based off the idea, what Dr. Xeno made could be an invention most likely to compete with the Kingdom of Science at sea, if not in the sky, because they both have planes, so depending on how they use the planes, they're even in the sky. And when it comes to the sea, Kingdom of Science may have them beat in that, because as far as we know, Xeno's castle doesn't have a form of seaworthy transportation, relatively speaking. But when it comes to land, I think that's going to be the key factor, because they're going to expect them to go, well, not even just ground specifically, but underground, because they're going to expect the aircraft because they lost a plane. They're going to expect the sea because they have a ship, but they're not going to expect an underground tunnel. They're not going to expect a secret tunnel, Avatar the Last Airbender, my friends. So, this is going to be a very interesting arc. Because we're going to have, as I said, a Kingdom of Science versus a Kingdom of Science. Something that we've never seen before. And having two science users that are particularly on caliber with each other, going up and fighting against one another, with one doing something that is going to be more direct, aka Xeno, and then having Senku, who's being more indirect via the secret tunnel. So, overall, really good chapter. The fact that they're focusing on my second best waifu in the series, Luna, and her finally getting a boyfriend, it was fun. It was interesting. I really loved it. And also confirmed the ideas that I had that Carlos, Max, and Luna will join the Kingdom of Science. And even though, yes, she kind of was tricked by Senku to join by him agreeing to be our boyfriend. What do you expect? It's Senku. He's not a good person, but I still really did love that. I like a lot of the comedic aspects of this chapter, and as well as the fact that this chapter is starting off the beginning of the end, not of just this war, but of this arc in general. So I can't wait to see where this is gonna come to a head, and I can't wait to read next chapter. So all in all, like I said, really good video. Hopefully you enjoyed this review. I enjoyed recording it. Leave a like down below. Leave a comment on what you think of this chapter. Do you think that the relationship between Luna and Senku is going to go anywhere? And what do you think that secret weapon of Dr. Xeno is? Leave your thoughts below. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. Do all of that cool jazz. And I'll catch y'all in the next video. Goodbye for now. But let's be honest. Do you think that their relationship is going to last? Because I'm going to be honest, I don't think so.